So he was conscious on the way to the hospital?
He was conscious on the way to the hospital. He was conscious in the ambulance. He was conscious after they did the surgery.
Suge Knight is a dead man walking. After decades of ruling hip-hop with fear, he is now trapped in a California prison. He is 60 years old. His body is failing. He has lost sight in one eye. In March 2025, his final appeal was rejected. The judge said he waited too long. Suge Knight knows he will die in that cell. For 30 years, he was blamed for the murder of Biggie Smalls. And for 30 years, he stayed silent. Until now, from a prison phone, Suge just dropped a bombshell that changes everything. The bombshell Suge just dropped. This is the story you thought you knew, but it is not. Suge Knight is finally talking. He started a new podcast from prison. It is called Collect Call, and what he is saying will shock you. For decades, the world believed Suge Knight hated the notorious B.I.G. Everyone believed Suge wanted revenge for Tupac. Everyone believed Suge ordered the hit. But now, Suge says that is a lie. In a new interview, Suge says he never hated Biggie. He called him an incredible artist. He said he was a businessman, and he dropped this bombshell. Suge claims that in a year or two, Biggie Smalls would have been a death row artist. Suge says he wanted to sign Biggie. So, if Suge did not have a reason to kill Biggie, then who did? Suge is now pointing his finger at the other man in the story, the man who ran Bad Boy Records.
As soon as them shots went off, everything came crashing down.
That legendary loss and the rise of Bad Boy Records explored in the new documentary Can't Stop, Won't Stop.
Sean Puffy Combs. Suge Knight says he feels bad for Puffy, who is in his own legal trouble. But then Suge asks a chilling question, a question that hangs over the entire case. He looks at the night Biggie was murdered. He looks at Puffy, and he asks, how was he shot and you not shot? Suge says Puffy was his man right there. He says Puffy should have been in that car with Biggie. This is Suge Knight's final explanation. He is rewriting the entire story. He is pointing the finger. To understand this, you have to understand who Suge Knight really is. You have to understand the man everyone called a monster. The king who built a red empire. Long before the prison cell, Marion Suge Knight was a king. He was born in Compton, California. His father gave him the nickname Suge. It was short for Sugar Bear. He was a star football player in high school. He was so good, he got a scholarship to play at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He even made it to the NFL. He played 2 games for the Los Angeles Rams in 1987. But football was not his future. The music business was. After football, Suge Knight became a bodyguard. He protected famous people like the singer Bobby Brown. But Suge was more than just a bodyguard. He was tied to the streets. He was affiliated with the Mob Piru Bloods gang. He brought the rules of the street into the music business. And that is how the legend of Suge Knight was born. The most famous story is about the rapper Vanilla Ice. It was the early 1990s. Vanilla Ice had a huge hit song. A rapper who worked with Suge claimed he helped write the song. But he never got paid, so Suge Knight decided to visit Vanilla Ice. The story became a legend. People said Suge dangled Vanilla Ice off a hotel balcony by his ankles. They said he threatened to drop him unless he signed over the money. Years later, Vanilla Ice told his side of the story. He said Suge never dangled him, but he said the rest was true. Suge Knight and his crew showed up at his hotel room. They were armed. Suge took him out onto the balcony. He looked down. Suge told him he needed to sign the papers. Vanilla Ice signed the papers. This is how Suge Knight did business. He used fear. In 1991, Suge Knight co-founded Death Row Records. His partner was the famous producer Dr. Dre. Suge got Dr. Dre out of his old contract. Together, they built an empire. Death Row Records changed music forever. They released Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic. It was a massive hit. Then they released Snoop Dogg's first album, Doggy Style. It sold millions of copies. Death Row Records became the most successful and the most feared record label in the world. Suge Knight was the king of the West Coast, but across the country, a new king was building his own castle. The other king. While Suge Knight was building Death Row with fear, Sean Puffy Combs was building his empire with ambition. Puffy started at the bottom. He was a young, hungry kid from Harlem. He got a job as an unpaid intern at Uptown Records. But Puffy was not an intern for long. He had an eye for talent. He rose up to become a star maker. But Puffy wanted too much, too fast. In 1993, his boss, Andre Harrell, fired him. Puffy was out of a job, but he had a plan. He did not just leave. He started his own label. He called it Bad Boy Records, and he took his greatest discovery with him, a young rapper from Brooklyn named Christopher Wallace. The world would soon know him as the notorious B.I.G. Puffy told the story of his first meeting with Biggie. He brought him to a famous soul food restaurant in Harlem called Sylvia's. Puffy said he was shocked. Biggie was a huge guy, but he was very quiet. Then, the most surprising thing happened. Puffy asked Biggie if he wanted to eat. They were at the best soul food restaurant in New York, and Biggie said no. Puffy said he realized Biggie could not even eat. He was too nervous. This was his dream. He was so focused on making it, he could not even think about food. Puffy signed him. In 1994, Bad Boy Records released Biggie's first album. It was called Ready to Die. The album was a masterpiece. It made Biggie Smalls the new central figure of East Coast hip-hop. Now, there were two kings, Suge Knight on the West Coast, Puffy on the East Coast. They were two empires built by two powerful men. And soon, those two empires would go to war. The war begins. It all started with friendship. Before the war, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls were friends. They respected each other. But one night changed everything. The date was November 30th, 1994. Tupac was at a recording studio in New York called Quad Studios. He was there to record a song. Biggie and Puffy were in a studio upstairs. When Tupac walked into the lobby, he was ambushed. Two men with guns robbed him. They shot him 5 times. Tupac fell to the floor, bleeding. He survived, but Tupac was convinced Biggie and Puffy had set him up. He believed they knew about the robbery. He believed they were responsible. From that moment on, the friendship was over. It was war. This is when Suge Knight made his move. Tupac was in jail on other charges. Suge Knight paid his $1.4 million bail. He flew Tupac to Los Angeles. He signed him to Death Row Records. Now, Tupac was Suge's new superstar, and he was Suge's weapon against Puffy and Bad Boy. The feud got worse. At the 1995 Source Awards, Suge Knight walked on stage. He looked at the crowd, and he insulted Puffy in front of everyone. The war was out in the open. Tupac released songs attacking Biggie and Puffy. The beef was no longer just music. It was real. It was dangerous. Then, on September 7th, 1996, the war turned deadly. Tupac was in Las Vegas with Suge Knight. They were there to watch a Mike Tyson fight. After the fight, Tupac and Suge were driving down the Las Vegas Strip. Suge was driving. Tupac was in the passenger seat. A white Cadillac pulled up next to them. Gunshots rang out. Tupac was shot 4 times. Suge was grazed in the head by a bullet. 6 days later, Tupac Shakur died. The king of the West Coast was gone. Suge Knight was wounded. The whole world knew what was coming next. It was not a question of if there would be payback. It was only a question of when. 6 months later, Biggie Smalls made a fatal mistake. He flew to Los Angeles. The night Biggie fell. It was March 9th, 1997, just 6 months after Tupac was murdered. Biggie was in Suge Knight's city. He was in Los Angeles. He was there to promote his new album. The album was called Life After Death. On the night of March 8th, Biggie and the Bad Boy crew went to a party. It was a huge event hosted by Vibe magazine. It was at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. The party was packed with stars. Around 12:30 a.m., the party got too crowded. The Los Angeles Fire Department shut it down. Everyone had to leave. Biggie and his team walked outside. They had a 2-car convoy. Puffy was in the first car, a white Chevy Suburban. Biggie was in the second car, a green 1997 GMC Suburban. He was in the front passenger seat. His friend Lil Cease was in the back. The convoy pulled out of the museum. They drove just 50 yards down the street. They stopped at a red light. The corner was Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue. It was 12:47 a.m. A dark-colored 1994 Chevrolet Impala SS pulled up. It stopped on the right side of Biggie's truck. Witnesses saw the driver. He was a black man. He was wearing a blue suit and a bow tie. The man lowered his window. He pulled out a 9mm pistol. He fired 6 or 7 shots into the green Suburban. The window shattered. 4 of the bullets hit Biggie Smalls. The Impala sped off. Biggie's crew was screaming. They grabbed Biggie and rushed him to the nearest hospital. It was Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, just a few blocks away. Doctors rushed him into surgery. They performed an emergency thoracotomy. They tried to save him, but it was too late. At 1:15 a.m., Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., was pronounced dead. He was 24 years old. The king of the East Coast was murdered. The case was an earthquake. Who did it? The answer seemed obvious. Everyone assumed it was Suge Knight. Everyone assumed it was retaliation for Tupac. The Los Angeles Police Department started digging. They launched a massive investigation, but the detective who led the case did not just find a simple gang shooting. He found something much, much worse. The hunt for the killer. Theory 1, the dirty cops. His name was Detective Russell Poole. He was one of the best detectives in the LAPD. He was highly respected, and he was put in charge of the Biggie Smalls murder case. Poole's investigation did not start with Biggie. It started with a different murder. A few weeks after Biggie was killed, 2 men got into a road rage argument. One of the men was shot and killed. It turned out both men were cops. The dead officer was named Kevin Gaines. He was an LAPD officer. When Russell Poole started investigating Gaines, he found something strange. This officer was living a very rich life. He drove a Mercedes. He wore expensive suits. Poole kept digging. He found out that Officer Kevin Gaines was working a second job. He was working as off-duty security for Death Row Records. He was on Suge Knight's payroll. This was the thread. Poole pulled it, and the entire LAPD began to unravel. He discovered a massive scandal. It became known as the Rampart Scandal. A group of cops in the LAPD's anti-gang unit were corrupt. They were planting evidence, they were stealing drugs, and they were working for Suge Knight. Poole found another officer who was tied to Suge. His name was David Mack. Poole was stunned. David Mack was not just a cop. He was a registered member of the mob Piru Bloods, the same gang as Suge Knight. Mack and Suge were close. Then came the smoking gun. Months after Biggie was murdered, Officer David Mack was arrested. He was arrested for robbing a Bank of America of $722,000. When detectives searched David Mack's house, they went to his garage. And what did they find? A black Chevrolet Impala SS, the exact same make and model of the car used to kill Biggie Smalls. Now, Russell Poole had his theory. He believed Suge Knight ordered the murder from jail. He believed Suge used his dirty cop connections to do it. Poole's theory was that Suge paid Officer David Mack, and Mack, in turn, hired his friend to be the shooter. The friend's name was Amir Muhammad. He was the man who matched the description of the shooter. The man in the suit and bow tie. Detective Poole was ready. He wrote a 40-page report. He detailed the entire conspiracy. He connected Suge Knight to David Mack to Amir Muhammad. He was ready to name a police officer as part of the most famous murder in the world. And then his bosses shut him down. Poole claimed that the chiefs of the LAPD, including Chief Bernard Parks, told him to stop. They told him to drop the investigation. Poole was disgusted. He believed the LAPD was covering up the truth. They did not want the world to know that their own officers were killers. In 1999, Russell Poole resigned from the LAPD in protest. He spent the rest of his life trying to solve the case. He could not let it go. In 2015, Russell Poole's story came to a chilling end. He was at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He was in a meeting. He was still discussing the Tupac and Biggie murders. And in that meeting, he suffered a massive heart attack. He collapsed and died. Detective Poole died chasing his theory. He believed Suge Knight used a dirty cop, but years later, a new team opened the case, and they found a different killer. The hunt for the killer. Theory 2, the gang hit. The case went cold for years. Then, the LAPD formed a new task force. This time, it was led by a detective named Greg Kading. Kading looked at all of Poole's work, and he came to a very different conclusion. Kading said he was absolutely confident the LAPD had nothing to do with the murder. He believed the dirty cop theory was wrong. He believed Russell Poole had been tricked. Kading's team started their own investigation, and they got a confession. Kading's investigation first looked at the Tupac murder. His team got a confession from a gang member named Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. Keefe D. claimed that Puffy Combs offered him $1 million to kill Tupac and Suge Knight. This confession is what led to Keefe D's arrest in 2023. So, if Puffy ordered the hit on Tupac, Kading believed Suge Knight ordered the hit on Biggie. It was pure retaliation. Greg Kading built his own theory of the Biggie murder. He agreed with Poole on one thing. Suge Knight was the man who gave the order, but Suge did not use a cop. He used a gang member. Kading's investigation alleged that Suge Knight, who was in jail, used his girlfriend to pass the message. Her name in the reports is Teresa Swan. Suge gave her $25,000. He told her to hire a hitman. The hitman was a well-known Death Row affiliated gang member. He was a mob Piru blood named Wardell Poochie Fowles. According to Kading, Poochie was the man who pulled up next to Biggie's truck. Poochie was the man who pulled the trigger. The task force felt they had solved the case. They knew who ordered it, Suge Knight. They knew who the shooter was, Poochie Fowles. But just like Poole's theory, this one also hit a dead end. In 2003, Wardell Poochie Fowles was riding his motorcycle in Compton. Another man pulled up and shot him. Poochie was shot 10 times in the back. He was murdered. Both theories ended in death. The man in Poole's theory, Amir Muhammad, was never charged and remains free. The man in Kading's theory, Poochie Fowles, is dead. But both theories start and end with one name. The one man who had the motive. The one man who had the power. Suge Knight. The last man standing. For nearly 30 years, this was the story. Two different detectives, two different investigations, two different shooters. But both investigations pointed directly at Suge Knight. One said he used a dirty cop. The other said he used a gang member. For decades, the world was certain. Suge Knight ordered the murder of Biggie Smalls. And now, we go back to 2025. Back to the prison cell. Suge Knight is old. He is sick. He is at the end of his life. His legal options are gone. His body is broken. He has nothing left to lose, and he is finally explaining. We hear his words from that prison phone. He says he never hated Biggie. He says he wanted to sign him. He says he had no motive. And then he asks that one simple, chilling question. The question that rewrites the entire story. He looks at Puffy, the man in the car in front, the man who was Biggie's protector, the man who walked away without a scratch. And Suge Knight asks, how was he shot and you not shot? Is this the final confession of a guilty man trying to deflect? Is this Suge's last move, trying to take his rival down with him? Or is it possible? Is it possible that for 30 years, everyone was looking at the wrong king? After all this time, the murder of the notorious B.I.G. remains officially unsolved. The trigger man in the bow tie was never caught. The rival detectives who chased the case are retired or in the grave. The man they believed was the killer, Poochie Faust, was himself murdered. And the two men at the center of the story, Puffy Combs and Suge Knight, are the only ones left. One is facing a mountain of new legal trouble. The other is locked in a prison cell, a dead man walking. His final whispered explanation echoing over a collect call.